discussing water issues, we always need to think about maintaining water quality, but we also need to consider water quantity. Using water wisely on our lawns and in our landscapes is an important concept for people living in the dry prairie states. And as populations continue to grow, increasing usage of water through municipal water systems or through homeowners' private wells increases the demand on our water resources. A large portion of water that's applied to lawns and landscapes is lost through water evaporation, through water being applied too quickly and pushed down below the root zone of the plants, or through the use of equipment that's not functioning properly. It's important to consider how much water should be applied, when it should be applied, and the equipment that you're using to get the best conservation of water in your landscape. Considering how much water should be applied, we always want to apply water deeply and thoroughly to promote a deep root system development on our landscape plants. Generally, landscape plants require 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week, and how that water is applied depends on what type of plants we're dealing with. Turfgrass usually requires water to be applied in increments of 1/2 inch, broken up into 2 or 3 applications through the week. Woody ornamentals would prefer that inch of water all be applied in one application to moisten the largest depth of soil and promote deep rooting in the plants. Daily, light applications of water are discouraged in the landscape because they promote shallow rooting, which makes plants more susceptible to drought stress, fluctuations in soil temperature, and wind extremes, which we often experience here in the Midwest. You also need to think about adjusting your water applications according to soil type. Clay-type soils will hold a great amount of water, but they have a much slower water percolation rate into the soil. Sandy soils, on the other hand, have a much faster water percolation rate, but they hold very small amounts of water within the soil profile. When applying 1/2 inch of water to a clay soil, it may be necessary for you to apply a small amount of water, allow that water to soak in, then come back and apply another amount of water, and doing that incrementally to allow the water to soak in and prevent it from running off the landscape. Slopes in a landscape will also affect how quickly water soaks into the soil, and water may need to be applied more slowly on slopes to prevent water runoff. Also, you need to consider when water should be applied to your landscape. And it's important to apply water as the plants need it, not on a preset schedule according to the calendar. Look for cues in your landscape indicating when plants need to have water applied. With turfgrass, dry conditions are often first noticed as the grass goes slightly off color to a dull blue-greenish tint. In extended dry conditions, wilting will occur in the turfgrass, and as you walk across the grass, your footprints will be noticeable as the grass fails to spring back after you move on. Other landscape plants can also be seen exhibiting color changes as they go more of a dull bluish-green color, and also slight wilting is an indication that water is needed in the landscape. To avoid disease development, schedule your waterings for early in the day, allowing your plants to dry off before they have to go into the evening hours. Leaf wetness on turfgrass and ornamental plants often promotes disease development. Also, avoid watering during the hottest part of the day to prevent a loss of water to evaporation and wind. Drip irrigation systems are probably the most water efficient type of equipment to use, since they apply the water directly to each individual plant and don't apply water to other non-plant growing areas in the landscape. Soaker hoses are also beneficial because they apply water directly to the root zone of the plant. Since they don't put water up into the air, there's very little water lost to evaporation. With turf irrigation systems, it's important to monitor your system on a regular basis, checking for damaged heads or heads that need to be redirected so that water is not applied to hard surfaces or is not running off in the landscape. Choose heads that emit water in large droplets. Irrigation heads that produce a fine mist also result in a large amount of water being lost to evaporation. If you're using just conventional sprinklers and hoses in your landscape, pay close attention to the placement of the sprinklers just to make sure that water is not being applied to sidewalks and driveways and that you're not having any water running off into the storm drains. Remember to adjust your watering practices as the seasons change. Fall is the time of year when most overwatering occurs as people fail to readjust their irrigation systems with falls approaching cooler temperatures. Also consider using mulch in your landscape to help preserve moisture in the soil and again prevent water loss to evaporation.